large enough for that to happen. But that brings me back to my question of the liver. Why would I need a space in the cellular makeup for the liver so that blood cells, and remember, I'm not just gonna leave it at the red blood cells, okay? Because we got the red blood cells, we got white blood cells, we got platelets, okay? Why do I need a space big enough for these cells to go into the liver?
Don't the liver and the spleen remove the cells from the body that excreted as their dying cells?
One of the things that will happen with the liver. Now, what do you think of when you hear spleen? Anything? Ever heard of it being called a blood organ? Do you know why they call it that? It's where the red blood cells go to die. And where those red blood cells can basically be broken apart, pieces that we can reuse get put back into the bloodstream, parts we need to excrete, we get rid of. Put that phone up. That's your first warning. Second time I see it, that's when you got to go out. Then, wait a minute. Have you ever heard of somebody who may have had their spleen removed? How is it then that their body gets rid of the red blood cells that need to die? Because they only have about a 120-day lifespan. The liver can do it. But the liver does so much. You can't really classify the liver into one organ system. You really can't. But these right here, okay, they are allowing for a lot of materials to move. One of the other things that will happen in the liver will make proteins. Proteins need, like, for example, do you guys remember the globulins that we have talked about? The ones, for example, that will transport hormones. I forgot that on our list over here. One of the things that we're carrying in the blood are the hormones. All right? Do you remember how some of them get transported on a protein, the globulins? They come from the liver. Other proteins come from the liver. Okay? So we have to make sure that in the parts of the body where materials are made and are needed elsewhere in the body, that there is a way for them to make it into the bloodstream. So in looking at the capillary beds, like I mentioned them how many times now? But web-like network of these capillaries, we have about 10 to 100 in a network, meaning all these little lines, okay, they are supplied by a single arteriole, small artery, or met arteriole, small artery. Is everybody kind of following me there? Okay? Now, at any one point in time, this is what I was saying earlier, we don't have enough blood in our body for every single capillary bed to be supplied at one time. By having their structure that they do, see these little sphincters? These are those contractile proteins, okay? And they get to do this number, close, all right? But if they're open, we get to see that the blood flows in to the artery side of the capillary bed. We meet the venous side that will go into the venules, which is the small vein, which will enter a small vein to a medium vein to a large vein back to the right side of the heart. And for the arterial side, we start big, go to medium, go to small, until we get to the smallest portion. And it's at the capillary beds. Arterial flow meets venous flow. And we have our nice closed circuit for blood flow. When needed, those contractile proteins, these sphincters, will contract. That means rather than the blood moving into my little teeny tiny capillaries, it will simply flow through my met and get to my venule and bypass this capillary bed. Meaning, any cells around this capillary bed, they don't get any nutrients, any of the stuff, and they don't get any of their waste picked up. You'll never think about your capillaries the same again. And this is the point. Everything in the body happens. I can't stress that enough. This is the point where fluid makes it to the tissues. It's the point, if there's fluid in that tissue, it can be picked up and gotten rid of. Everything is at this level. So I'm going to see that my arterial side, which is carrying so much, gets to come in. We get to drop off, we get to pick up, and then we meet our veins. Now, on the arterial side, even at the level of the capillary, there's a little bit of pressure. Do you remember how we talked about blood pressure? At 120 over 80, okay? And as that flow from the aorta continues to all of these areas, I always tend to just point to somewhere, you know, because I know there's a capillary there, okay? And I knew that it went from very large, meaning the aorta, okay, to something medium, like my brachial or my ulnar artery, and I get down to my small until I get to my capillary, okay? That's why y'all always see me just kind of point, because I know it's going to be a capillary. I know that on that arterial side, there's a tiny bit of pressure at the level of that capillary bed. Now let's think about that for a second. People who have high blood pressure, how do you think that affects at the capillary level? Would that pressure still be high? It'll still be high. Higher than it should be. But when you think about that meeting of that artery to the vein, like right there at the capillary bed, by the time we have the little bit of pressure right here on the arterial side, boom, Nothing over here on the veins, on the venous. It's really cool. But wait a minute. How is it if I have a little bit of pressure on my arterial side? What do you think that's going to do to help with moving of the materials? If I've got a little bit of pressure over here, do you think that would help materials go out? It can, yes. Everything in our body, believe it or not, is based on pressures. Well, no, let me take that back. Well, yeah, no. Okay, for the most part, yeah. Okay, so that little bit of pressure is going to be beneficial to help materials move out. But then, wait a minute. I get right here, meet the venous system, and I have no pressure. So how is it that the stuff over here from the tissue is going to get to the veins and get to bigger veins back to the heart to circulate? Where's my pressure going to be? In the tissues or in this little venous side of the capillary? It's going to be in the tissues. Therefore, making all these wastes come into that venous side. Like a suction. Over here, pushing it out, creating a pressure in the tissue so that we get like this suction activity on the venous side to pull in the waste. And water is important because water gives us osmotic pressure, correct? Particles give us the pressure of, well, not really pressure, but movement of particles. One more reason that it becomes important to make sure you stay hydrated. So our veins, pressure is almost non-existent for the veins of the body. We call them capacitance, okay? Capacity, all right? Because one of the things that you're going to find, if you go back to the very first slide, the title slide, it showed a picture of an artery and a vein. The artery was thicker. It had a thicker middle layer, which is like the smooth muscle portion. And on the venous side, they're not quite as big, not as much of the smooth muscle present, blah, blah, blah. These are more, they have the better ability to have this ability to hold more fluid, i.e. the blood, okay? So they have a ability for capacity to have more blood in them than the arteries did. So, like I was saying, their blood pressure is almost non-existent, okay? At the most, about 10 millimeters of mercury, which is nothing compared to the arteries, okay? Their flow is steady, and it is not pulsating. The blood flow through the arteries is termed pulsatile because the heart beats, what was it, about 76 beats per minute? And that means 76 pulses of blood through the arteries until they make it to the capillaries. Once we get to the veins, no, that's not the case. It gets to kind of flow in and just la-di-da, la-di-da, la-di-da. Okay? Nothing is like pushing it. So, we're going to find that as of date,